What's up, all you lazy, entitled, basement-dwelling millennials, bootstrapping boomers, apathetic Xers, and goddamn Gen Z kids today? This is another, hopefully getting better episode of the Let Them Eat Toast podcast. With me, as always, is Taylor, and joining us again is our becoming resident tag-along, Chris, at Fly Fast Planes.
That one.
And today, you see, Chris is from Michigan, and I don't know why we invited him to this particular podcast, but we were going to talk about, Minnesota versus Wisconsin because we're from Minnesota and we decided to not have any Wisconsin representation here because they don't get a say in what we think about them.
Right.
Why bother?
But we figured we'd let Michigan contribute because Michigan's kind of the stoned uncle over there, as Chris put it.
Yeah.
And we're really going to talk, mostly about policy differences between Minnesota and Wisconsin, as they are very similar demographically, very similar as far as like agricultural Midwest states. The really, you're not going to get a much better comparison between states than Minnesota and Wisconsin. And that really highlights the policy differences between what our state has done to make us better in every conceivable way than Wisconsin, and all of the bad policies that they have passed that make them Wisconsin.
Or more succinctly, why you walk around the suburbs of Minnesota and see a bunch of Green Bay Packer flags.
Yeah, sure.
Basically, we're going to tell you why Minnesota is better than your state.
Exactly. But for posterity's sake, we are drinking some beer here today, and I do have New Glarus, and he's got Surly Furious, so we came prepared. I don't know what Chris is drinking. He's in Michigan somewhere.
I am drinking a lemon lime bubbly because Michael Bublé told me I should do that.
Healthy.
Yeah.
Got to be somewhere.
It's you got founders over there. What are you doing?
Then it comes to the problem I have with beer and need spirits. So moving on.
Yeah, that is true. All right. So, we got into a little bit why this comparison is relevant. I don't think that there's two better states to compare strictly based on policy. And Minnesota has really been pushing policy now in the past year. We got universal school meals passed, women's health care rights enshrined in our Constitution, trans protection, gender affirming care stuff enshrined in the Constitution. It's a lot of big stuff. Paid family medical leave.
There is a really, really long list of stuff here. There's probably, what did they have in the Capitol? They had like a poster of like all the accomplishments. And they checked everything that they had written on there. I think it was like at least 30 items. Yeah. It was a lot, and all really good stuff. All stuff that is probably overdue. But this is the first trifecta we've had in a while, and we're making good use of it. I think better than probably arguably any other state in the country with the trifecta we have. Certainly in this legislative session. Absolutely. And then Wisconsin hasn't accomplished much lately because they have a Democratic governor and a Republican legislature, and they don't agree on much. But it's not for lack of trying. They tried to ban abortion, and it was banned for a year, but that got overturned by a judge as being unconstitutional. They tried to ban. The GOP blocked a ban of conversion therapy, which sounds confusing, but they tried to pass so you couldn't do conversion therapy and, electrocute gay kids for being gay or whatever they do in conversion therapy. And GOP's like, no, we need to still allow them to electrocute gay kids. Minnesota did ban it. Wisconsin did not. Yeah. Ban. Well, Wisconsin actively Wisconsin banned banning it. That's what they did.
As a different aside, if they have a Democratic governor, why weren't they able to get Democratic majorities in, say, the state Senate and state legislature? Because if you're winning the statewide races, why aren't you winning the down ballot races?
Well, Wisconsin is the most gerrymandered, if not the most, definitely top 3 most gerrymandered states in the country. Like, they are really badly gerrymandered. And actually, they've been fighting those issues right now, too, because they just got a new Supreme Court judge. And she's, on the more progressive side, and they weren't happy about that. And they tried to impeach her over it because there is going to be a gerrymandering case coming to Wisconsin that now, with the Supreme Court being not controlled by conservatives, is not likely to go favorably for conservatives. Thankfully, they've backed off of their impeachment efforts, and now they're trying all other ways to sidestep that case coming up. So that's something we need to keep an eye on.
Which I think we can all agree that gerrymandering and redistricting is really flawed in the way that we do it in the United States.
Well, like
statewide,
is there like a measurement for how gerrymandered they are? Like, how do you show that they are the most gerrymandered? There's got to be something to point to, right?
Yeah, there's a couple places that or a couple organizations that give report cards on how states are gerrymandered, there's different things you can look at, but usually what it comes down to is, does the district legislator represent the voters that that district has elected that person? So like if it's 60% Democrat and 80% of the state legislature is Republican, which is kind of what it's like in Wisconsin. I mean, they're a pretty 50-50 state there.
Yeah.
Then obviously it's the districts are designed to minimize the minority party's votes as much as possible, and Wisconsin's way up there on that.
So effectively, you take all the Democratic votes and all the Republican votes, just statewide, like in all the local elections, add them all together, and that ought to give you a measurement of roughly how the legislators split up. And if it's not aligned, then there's a gerrymandering, right?
Right. And then they get into more nitty gritty for how bad individual districts are gerrymandered and, how they go about it. And there's different ways you can get into that. But
yeah, one really great site here is gerrymander.princeton.edu. It's called the Gerrymandering Project. And there's a redistricting report card for every state. And I guess 2022 was a big year for it. And obviously there's, look at Alabama, there's some issues with some states' decisions, but a lot of them haven't finalized. So.
Yeah, they're still working on the redistricting maps because it comes after every census. They get to redistrict usually
every 10 years.
Yep. So I think So moving on, that's how the state has managed to keep such a consistent conservative control. They've also had a pretty tight grip on the Supreme Court for a while, which they're now thankfully losing, but which has upheld the gerrymandering. And I think that's kind of the important loop there. The Supreme Court upholds the gerrymandering upholds the uneven representation. Mm-hmm. But
so one thing, and this is actually very recent, I think the proposal just got put out like yesterday, possibly. I was doing a little bit of last minute research this morning and found that there is a proposal in the Wisconsin legislature to implement ranked choice voting for the state.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We'll have to keep an eye on that. Yeah, I hadn't even heard about that yet.
It's just going into committee now. So there's obviously no guarantees that it makes its way out of the committee through both houses. Hopefully, if it makes it to the governor, I think hopefully should be able to sign that. But compared to Minnesota, apparently earlier this year, our Secretary of State, quote, said Minnesota is not ready for statewide ranked choice voting, end quote.
I say fuck him.
I agree. I don't. I'm pretty sure as one of the most educated populations as far as states go, we can probably handle ranked choice voting. I think pretty much every American can handle it. So
yeah, it's not that complicated. It's like, here's the guy I want the most, and then if he doesn't win, here's the guy that would be my second choice. Like, we've
got a whole video on voting methods that you guys should be able to see here. That should be up by the time that this comes out. So definitely tune into that and see that ranked choice voting is a lot better than what we're currently looking at.
Exactly. It's like when you go to the bar and you see the girl that you want to pick up, but she might be a little out of your league. So what's your second choice? You always got a second and third choice. It's the same concept. It's not that hard for Americans to grasp.
I was hoping.
And one of those choices is you can go home. You can be like, hey, none of these choices are good enough. I want this one or I'm going home. Can you give me an example of like in real life what ranked choice voting is?
So it's where you get to go and, you know, it's like, this is the person I'd like the most. And if they don't win, then I get to pick, you know, the next person. This would be my second choice. It's like when you go to the bar and you're in Minnesota. So your first choice is New Glarus. This is the only good thing that comes out of Wisconsin. And they don't have that on tap. Your next choice is probably going to be what? McGolden?
Maybe for you, I've got a wide variety of taste buds that like different flavors. You know, some people actually enjoy different styles of beer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bud Light, perhaps.
It's really close up there. Really high.
Anyway, so that would be preferable, and it's unfortunate that Minnesota is not. Our Secretary of State is thinking that we're not capable of doing that. So
ranked choice voting is definitely like a B, solid B as far as ranking or voting methods. The current method is a C, so you could skirt by.
Yeah.
You know, you can still get that degree, but you're not making the dean's list.
Yeah, we're doing okay, but we could be doing better. Anyway,
that's fair.
Well, why don't we jump into
just how Minnesota's better?
Yeah, I mean, there's some very clear, just statistical metrics that we can walk through. So, first couple ones is GDP. Lead us into it.
Our GDP, Minnesota is 446 billion, and I think Wisconsin's around 306 billion, which is a pretty massive difference in GDP for two neighboring states. And 446 billion obviously isn't anything compared to like California, but for a Midwest state, that is a solid, respectable GDP. And it gets, the comparisons get more accurate when you look at Minnesota has less people, not a lot, but 5.7 million versus just shy of 6 million in Wisconsin. So we've got slightly less people and still a bigger GDP.
So your per capita is blowing them away. So even when someone goes to the whataboutism of that, like you got to cover.
Huge. There's no whataboutism there. Median income.
Like it.
I got a lot of different reports for what median income is. So if you hear that and you're like, no, I looked it up and it's something different. It probably is depending on who you look it up for. But I used both from Statista, and they said Minnesota's 90,000 and Wisconsin 73,000. And I think if you just do that side-by-side comparison of whatever that median income is going to be, it's going to be a similar gap because that's kind of the way I'd seen it across the board. So, I mean, that's considerable. And, people bitch about Minnesota taxes being a little bit higher, but you can afford to pay a little bit more taxes when you're making a lot more money.
I mean, I was on the jump seat of an Airbus the other day, and the captain lived in Minnesota, and all he complained about is just how much tax. He's like, yeah, I can afford them. But like in places like Florida and Tennessee and Nevada, where your income tax is zero, all of a sudden it starts to look a lot better.
But then you have to live in Florida or Tennessee or Nevada.
I mean, those were points that were made on the flight.
Right. Aren't we still though talking about like a 10% difference basically? Like isn't
and for him that 10%
like 20% or something.
And for him that 10% happened to be 90 grand that he was complaining about. So
I mean, and I understand to an extent, but again, he
can afford it.
You get what you pay for, right? You get what you pay for. Like
all those plow trucks on the road, every winter storm, you get 2 inches. They go out, and in the major highways, within a couple hours, you're good to go. So, it's a really easy example that you see with your own eyes.
Yeah, and again, Minnesota has a lot more infrastructure just in general than Wisconsin. You drive through Wisconsin and there's, nothing from our border to damn near the Illinois border with like the exception of Madison. There's just nothing out there. There's a couple water parks in the middle somewhere, but I don't think those are paid for with tax. I know they might have been paid for with tax dollars. No one knows.
Probably tax assistance.
Yeah.
Socialism for businesses.
But talking about taxes, it is interesting because, conservatives always want to stand on their economic prowess, and they're pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, and everybody else who doesn't agree with them are the welfare queens. And Minnesota is one of 10 states that pays more in federal taxes than it receives in federal aid. Wisconsin is not one of those 10 states, and They get a fair bit of money from the federal government, much more than their citizens pay, and in theory they should actually be getting more, but their government sucks at asking for it. So that's on them.
Well, they're proudly conservative, so they would never ask.
Well, yeah,
except for when they do.
Yeah, there's some easy money.
Mitch McConnell loves asking for the money.
Yeah, there's some easy money that gets left on the table for Medicare, Medicaid, and with the taking on of the ACA, or better known as Obamacare, where a bunch of states stood. I was like, we're not going to take this money. It's not the money we feel good taking. And I'm like, okay, go for it, buddy.
Yeah.
You're missing out on money for your people.
You're right. There's still citizens who need healthcare. There's still citizens living in poverty. There's still citizens who are food insecure. But why bother helping them when there's available funds in a system that allows you to implement them very easily?
Minnesota pays $6 billion more. I was just going to say, and then than we get, and Wisconsin gets $1.2 billion in federal welfare. So, who's the welfare queens here?
Yeah. For your Minnesotan tax dollars, what else do you get that the Wisconsinites are not getting for their tax dollars on a state level, not necessarily down from the feds?
Well, again, back to healthcare. Citizens need healthcare. Minnesota ranks 4th in best healthcare systems. We're definitely a top 5 state in healthcare access. If you don't make that much money, Minnesota helps you considerably. Minnesota Care is a pretty decent program. Obviously, I don't think any type of privatized healthcare is good, but ours is better than a lot of other places. Definitely better than Wisconsin, which again ranks 20th in healthcare systems and access.
Plus, we get road construction all the time.
Yeah, never-ending road construction.
It's like a benefit if you were ever going to want. It's always there.
We're getting some public transit coming in now. We have decent public transit. We could definitely use some improvements, but now we're getting a train that's going from Minneapolis to Duluth with some stops in between. The light rail's getting some expansions as well.
Coming right through my neighborhood, actually.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, right off the main highway. I actually just saw some signs that appeared to be against it. And I just...
the shit that people are against.
Yeah, I mean, why give people better commuting options?
No, I want to spend money and have to drive around for 45 minutes to park. That's how I want to live my life, okay?
Right. Parking isn't hard enough in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And something else I've always found interesting is if these conservative policies are so great for business, why do they have less jobs and need to keep going to neighboring states to work? Because I actually found the numbers. 69,000 Wisconsinites cross the border to work in Minnesota compared to 29,000 Minnesotans working in Wisconsin. That's a huge difference. And if your policies were so great for business and so great for jobs, you'd think that the ebb and flow would be going the other way. And
to be fair, there is no comparable city to Minneapolis on the Wisconsin side. That's right along the border. And obviously, there are a few towns.
Yeah, but Milwaukee is within your state, and you're not going to Milwaukee. You're going to Minneapolis. So,
right?
No, exactly. That's true. That's absolutely true.
And again, whose fault is it that they don't have any major cities? I mean, they're on the Mississippi or on the St. Croix right there. The same. I mean, I guess we've got the Mississippi running through the heart of Minneapolis, St. Paul, so I'll give them a pass on that. We do have the bigger river, but other than that, what was stopping them?
Yeah, but they have the other side of Lake Michigan. That Michigan has had the ability to put a number of pretty substantial towns along the way of, and Wisconsin just doesn't. Like Green Bay is the only thing they got.
That's another great example is Superior and Duluth. They're two port cities, right? They border each other. They're both on Lake Superior. They both have similar harbor access. And Duluth is better in every measurable way except maybe strip clubs. So
though, to be fair with that comparison as well, just playing devil's advocate here, the mining obviously does come majority from the Minnesota side. So it makes sense that
it gets shipped out on the Minnesota side.
Gravitate, towards Minnesota, being that it's all coming from.
So does does Wisconsin not have the minerals? Because I know Michigan up there has similar minerals that are being mined at the same time and use Lake Superior to ship them out.
If they do, it's definitely not as big of an industry.
Okay. No, Minnesota has the biggest iron mining industry in the country by a large margin, and it has forever, pretty much as long as they've been mining iron ore and now taconite, because we mined all the ore and we're like, we can get less good ore work. That's what they did, and
diminishing returns.
And we've made it work. So I mean, that is fair, but again,
the numbers don't lie.
And then okay, not based specifically on geographic and resources. Who has more Fortune 500 companies?
Minnesota.
By a lot. Almost double the number of Fortune 500 companies. Minnesota has 15. We did lose one this year, Securion, but we had 16. Wisconsin has 8. We've got 26 Fortune 1000 companies. Wisconsin has 20. We have the most Fortune 500 companies per capita of any state. So when you adjust for population, and we've got the largest private company in the world, which is Cargill. So like if our policies are so bad for business and the conservative ones are so great, it's really hard to make that argument when you start looking as to why are not all of these, because Cargill's an agricultural based company. Why Wisconsin has all the same agricultural resources that we do. We're both farming,
Iowa
or Illinois. Yeah, there's plenty, either of the Dakotas.
Bits of Ohio, which is for some reason considered the Midwest, even though the only thing it is mid.
That's not almost Midwest. Yeah,
that's right. Love this line.
Like your Skyline chili.
I really think that we all get kind of browbeaten with these arguments all the time that conservative policies are better for the economy, are better for jobs, are better for business, better, and you just don't see it. And it's like really hard to ever put those comparisons. It's like, all right, well, California is a huge state with all of these resources, and New York is a huge state with all these resources, and Florida is a huge state with all these resources, and Texas, and it's like, how do you compare those to heartland states and like really compare those types of policies? But Minnesota and Wisconsin are as close as you're going to get. And the difference is the policy. I mean, 90% of the difference is going to be policy on that. And you can just see one state is clearly better by pretty much every metric.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't understand how and I think a lot of it comes down to messaging, is how we don't push this messaging more. Like, we have the numbers to back us up, and nobody ever brings it. Nobody ever talks about it. It's just like, yep, you just assume the talking points.
For we don't for like paid medical leave. What does Minnesota do differently compared to Wisconsin then?
I'm not aware of any paid.
I don't think we got paid medical leave. I do.
In Wisconsin, we will have paid medical leave in 2025.
Okay.
I believe. 12 weeks of 12 weeks of paid time for serious medical condition, and 12 weeks to actually take care of said family member. So, which
is huge. Also, parental leave, we're going to be getting that too.
2026, up to 12 weeks for newborn.
Nice.
So, and that'll come from the state, not your employer. Where Wisconsin is a right to work state, and obviously we had our union conversation before, Don't
get me started on right to
medical
work.
leave. They can just say, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, with right to work, it's the right for your employer to work you harder and for you to get less. Like, right to work sounds really good. It is a great example of Republicans getting the messaging right. However, the benefits is to like the company and to capital, not necessarily to people. And when you prioritize people, good things happen.
Yep. And I think that is a big reason why, despite, being taxed at maybe a slightly higher rate or something, all of these big companies come to Minnesota, is because we have a amazing labor pool here. We have a really educated workforce, and companies need that. It's great that in Tennessee you don't pay income tax, but nobody fucking wants to live there. You know what I mean? And if you don't have a qualified workforce to come build the things you need to build and administrate your company, you can't have a company there. No. And that's one thing that I think draws big companies, despite the higher taxes, to Minnesota. But those higher taxes pay for infrastructure and culture. And I mean, we have a great city. We've got a ton of things to do, a ton of places to go. It's affordable, especially when you assume medium income. With all of that, you get good people to work for you, and you have to have those things, or people don't want to live there. It's like you'd have to import all of your workforce to go work in one of these places that, okay, great, they have some more favorable tax policy, but
and it's not that obviously people don't want to live in Tennessee necessarily. It's that the quality of the workforce and the labor force is there to a certain extent. There's a limited quantity, and I think when you look at a state like Minnesota, that quantity is a lot larger. It's a much higher number of just the general labor force that is higher, more educated, and has more schooling overall. So that just makes a lot more businesses. It allows them to hire more people and more businesses to just sort of surround themselves here.
But my point, what I was getting at, is people want to live here because they have, decent infrastructure, decent public transit. You have, cultural stuff to go do and entertainment and that kind of stuff. And a lot of that is supported by a little bit higher taxes and more progressive policies, where it's like, great, yeah, Tennessee's beautiful, but their public transit sucks. You don't have a whole lot in the ways of entertainment unless you're in a tourist town like Nashville or anything like that.
Nashville does have a lot of country music. To that, there's a whole street for it, at least.
And Knoxville and, Knoxville is also a fun town. It's got, the Smokies right there, along with...
it's an okay town. I mean, I've been to Knoxville quite a few times, and it's okay. I wouldn't want to live there. Yeah. It's you get bored
It's
quick.
Adjacent to the tourist trap that is Gatlinburg, and that does bring in a fair bit of revenue from outside of the state, but it is not the place you necessarily want to spend all your time all year round.
Right, yeah. You wouldn't want to live there. Plus, the allergies are just awful in Tennessee, but that can't be helped with policy.
Those pine trees.
You can tell I've spent some time down there. And I'm back here in Minnesota, if that tells you anything.
What?
A little bit.
Have you talked about healthcare, how Minnesota and Wisconsin stack up against each other yet?
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit, and now, and Minnesota now is moving towards free in-state college tuition as well. So we'll be really amping up that qualified, competent, quality labor force here, and drawing more competent, qualified people to the state. And another cool thing, and Wisconsin's actually part of this, and credit where it's due, but we've got tuition reciprocity with, I know, Wisconsin, Canada. Yeah.
Is it Canada? I haven't heard Canada. I know of Iowa, South Dakota.
It might just be Manitoba. I think it's just Manitoba, not like all of Canada. But yeah, reciprocity with Iowa, the Dakotas. I think Indiana's even in there, maybe. Huh. We have a pretty wide spread of in-state college reciprocity, tuition reciprocity, which is cool. So I'm interested to see how that's going to transfer with free in-state tuition for Minnesota residents, if that's going to be extended to all the reciprocity states, and if people from Wisconsin are going to have an out to come to a better state.
I would not think so. And so I actually lied. It's Minnesota, Wisconsin, North and South Dakota. Iowa is not part of it.
Okay.
But one institution in Iowa and the Canadian province of Manitoba.
Yep. So
there you go. Learn something new every day.
Yeah. So that's really exciting, and I think that's the kind of stuff Minnesota is investing in. the infrastructure and the education and the healthcare and all the things that are going to pay off dividends in the future. And these things, a lot of these things pay for themselves. We always act like this costs so much in tax money, but you forget that better educated people make more money and they pay more taxes.
Make smarter financial decisions.
People who are taken care of health-wise don't go to the emergency room because they don't have health insurance, and then that bill gets passed on to the taxpayer. So it's cheaper to give people health care than it is to deny them health care.
And the same is it for when you have a brain drain from Wisconsin. And you said that, you guys are netting, 40-ish thousand people a year coming from Wisconsin
Almost 70.
Odds are they have an education. Yep. People that have higher education are more mobile as a general rule. And you know, that's going to contribute to the workforce in Minnesota.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And so I think that, we've had a lot of these progressive policies over the life of Minnesota. We were thankfully the only state that didn't vote for Reagan that one time, which I'm proud of us for. We did good.
Being paid well also happened kind of 2010. So, we're still kind of coming out of the 2008, 2009 recession and the bad times there. And it didn't really start to get much better. I really do think that one of the major turning points for Michigan while they were parallel in Florida, one thing they didn't do was if you do a ballot initiative in Michigan, you need 50% plus one. In Florida, you need 60% plus one. You need a supermajority to pass an amendment. The amendment that got this only got 57%. So the amendment that put this in place, this higher bar of getting to change things, wouldn't have passed had that higher bar been applied to it, which is very disconcerting. And even more so than that, it means that it entrenches the policy you have and makes it more difficult for the voter's voice to be heard, because you then need over 60% of them to vote and shout something down, or to vote to, affirm something and bring it up. In Michigan, it stayed at 50%. And with that 50%, they were able to use that to do the Michigan Independent Redistricting Council. And what that did was effectively take Michigan from one of the more gerrymandered states, much like Florida and Wisconsin, to now one of the least. I believe on some of those efficiency scores, they're only off by a couple percentage points, which is considered very good. And while it's not perfect, it does better represent the average Michigander's voice in both the state house and in the delegation that gets sent to the federal House of Representatives.
Absolutely. And there is no perfect way to do districting. No. I mean, there's just not. People move, demographics change, within that decade, even if you did manage to get it absolutely perfect. But the idea is to make it as close to perfect as you can because it's also very easy to make them as far from perfect as possible, and just kind of having that oversight. So that's awesome.
No stupid questions here, but why not just use county lines?
They don't necessarily break down population appropriately, and nor do they. It's difficult to get it just right because, you have some counties that are packed. So like if you go for Macomb County where Detroit is, or Ingham County where Lansing is, those are relatively dense. But the city of Lansing is in a corner of Ingham County. But then there's a couple other counties that then are the suburbs of Lansing. So you wouldn't necessarily, you'd still get some cutoff there, and it wouldn't get necessarily the population distributed as about in a more equal way.
I think too, a good example, like, in the Twin Cities, we've got, I don't remember how many counties are a part of the Twin Cities, but you've got like Anoka and Ramsey and stuff like that.
Yeah. Hennepin, Dakota.
And you'll have where some of those corners are in a denser population closer to city center. And then they get out into these big, wide, rural suburban areas, and they cover a lot of ground. And those big, wide, rural suburban areas could offset, the probably heavier minority populations that would be closer to. And that would essentially be accidental gerrymandering at that point.
Gotcha.
So you want your congressional district to represent the people in it the best, population wise, because you only get so many representatives per state. So you need to split them up as fairly as possible among that. Yeah,
like the average U.S. House representative represents something in the neighborhood of 700,000 people. That's a give or take number. It's not set in stone, but you're trying to represent 700,000 people. You want to try to get those 700,000 people to be similar if you can manage it, but you don't want to try to pack in, say, a 30% of a minority, but then 70% of like a majority you want to preserve, and then keep breaking up this bigger population that should at least get a vote or two when it comes to sending representatives up, and instead getting them zero. That's not a fair use of the political maps.
So to your point, county lines would be better than, intentionally gerrymandered lines for sure, like 100%. But there's still more fair ways to do it than what we currently, than those lines would allow.
Sounds like I needed some more research.
Yeah.
It's a complicated thing. I mean, I don't know. I would not want to hang out with the people who actually sit down there and draw the maps to gerrymander stuff, because those have to be the most unsufferable motherfuckers on the goddamn planet. Like, that's what you spend all of your time doing, is like, how can I disenfranchise these minorities with the most monotonous line drawing on the planet?
This is where it gets...
You just got to not be fun at
they're not. But the problem is they're not the boring people that are drawing the lines. They now have computers that do it for them, which is why in 2010, with money from the Koch brothers, you may or may not have heard of them, they basically, in Michigan was one of those states where they focused on winning a majority of the House of Representatives, and then they effectively outsourced the drawing of the lines to the vast amount of data they had just collected from that election to try to split it up to entrench a Republican minority within the state of Michigan, one where statewide elections are very rarely won by Republicans.
Skynet.
I know. So they're more interesting at parties than you would give them credit for. But yes, they're probably just as insufferable as you think they are.
Well, they used to do it the old pen and paper way. So, I mean, that's how it got started. Now we're letting the robots take over and subjugate us, and I, for one, am about ready to welcome our robot overlords. I'm not going to lie.
God.
It can't be any worse.
Is there a time when Futurama will not be relevant?
Never. Maybe in like 3020, when it's, in the past, then Futurama will be history. It'll be like Back to the Future what year did they go forward to? Was it 2021?
I thought it was 2018 or something like that, because it's the year the Cubs won the World Series.
It was something that we blew by, and it's like, well, we're still not dressing like that yet. So.
Still waiting for my
hoverboard.
No, not the hoverboard. The shoes, the Nikes.
Oh yeah. In all fairness, the Cubs did win the World Series, and no one would have called that the year before.
That is true. That is a fair point. They got one thing right. Not quite Simpson, Futurama, Matt Growing. How the hell do you say his name? Groening. Matt Groening. Not quite his prophetic level yet, but
or The Simpsons having Trump go down the golden escalator, and then I don't know if you saw that episode, and then did it on purpose. I sort of doubt that, but that was pretty on point.
Yeah. But yeah, so Michigan's been making some serious strides here. They've been doing some good work. And again, working on becoming the anti-Florida.
Yeah, hopefully. Very much so. And I think that once those maps got redrawn, for the first time in nearly 35 years, definitely in my lifetime, the Democrats controlled the Senate, the House, and the governorship all at the same time. And I don't think they'd controlled the Senate in 35 years. It was a major step in terms of, hey, it turns out these gerrymanders, when you un-gerrymander them, it turns out the folks that were relying on gerrymandering to win started losing. And a whole bunch of policies that had been stopped from happening and reforms that needed to happen, like right to work, got repealed. If you'd have asked if right to work was going to get repealed in Michigan a couple of years ago, I'd said you're out of your mind. And here we are. That happened. That was a good thing. It helped support the unions and helped support, our brothers and sisters in labor with the UAW in terms of getting hopefully a fair wage soon enough. Moreover, though, they set in protections for healthcare, including abortion and transgender care, that I wouldn't have called Michigan doing a few years ago. And they're the sort of things that Florida definitely isn't going. Ron DeSantis is waging a war on woke, which seems like a great idea because the war on drugs and the war on whatever noun you have always works. And
yeah, his war on Disney is going great too. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, Mickey Mouse has more lawyers than you can shake a stick at, and they're generally the really good ones. So,
and they're petty as fuck too. 'Cause, like, you piss off the mouse, and it's you're in for a bad time.
And I think that on top of fixing the gerrymander maps, the people in Michigan feel like their voice is being heard now, and they're better representative. And voter turnout has gone up a little more than surrounding states. And I really do think that's one of the reasons. If you feel your voice is being heard, you show up.
That's awesome. So then, like, obviously with Michigan as well, Detroit's the butt of a lot of jokes, especially with the fact that it looks like a third world country. And then there's Flint that, they haven't been able to drink the water in decades and like all these kinds of things. And I think there's been a lot of breakdown. I don't think that came necessarily along political lines, all of Michigan's downfall in those areas. But how's that coming along? You're telling me that they're getting better, long overdue to get better, but is that policy based at all?
So a little bit of background. I have lived off and on in Michigan over the last 12 years now, 14 years, I'm sorry. And one of my jobs was I delivered DiGiorno. So, not delivering DiGiorno. I've heard. So
it's not. So it is delivered.
It is delivered,
okay.
Right? It has to get to the grocery store somehow. And it used to get to the grocery store through what's called direct store delivery, abbreviated as DSD in the grocery business. Basically, I drove a big international truck that was just, straight box truck with a freezer in the back and, 500 cases of pizza if I was driving the big truck fully loaded and going to the various stores and, figuring out what they needed, pulling those boxes out of the truck and putting them on the shelf. Part of my territory was in Flint, and it was at the start of the water crisis. And this was one of those ones where NPR, being the good news source it is, as some will debate whether it is fair or not, it's a different story. It is, in case you're wondering. And they made the announcement about a month after they switched that the GM truck and bus plant in Flint was no longer going to use the Flint water because it wasn't good enough to wash truck parts in. It was affecting their quality. That was when I quit drinking the water from the water fountains in Flint and started carrying a water bottle around. And everyone looked at me like I had put on a tinfoil hat and I was like the dumbest person on earth. This was the only time I've had a conspiracy theory that worked out to be right. I'm thankful it was, but I'm not going to try my luck again. Flint has had to deal with a fair bit, and it stems a lot with the outsourcing and the changing in the auto industry. They used to have a lot of the kind of sub-suppliers that were owned by GM or Ford that are now owned by, second and third tier auto manufacturers, companies you may or may not have heard of, like Denso being one of the bigger ones, Delphi being another one of the bigger kind of top tier, but not as a supplier, but not a company that actually makes the vehicle themselves. Those were good union jobs, and they basically shipped them off, put them into separate companies, and a lot of them went out of business, a lot of them consolidated, and they deunionized them. And those jobs.
And that's a really interesting.
Oh, sorry.
That's a really interesting point with the water quality and mixed in with the automakers. Is I was watching this documentary about PFAS, and apparently a number of Ford or GM companies were dumping PFAS into the water supply of their communities. And basically they said they could not keep up with the filtration of the PFAS because of production demands of the motor companies. And people were losing their farms, entire farms. Their cattle that had been drinking the water had like unusually high levels of PFAS in their system. So basically people like lost their entire livelihood due to these chemicals. And I think Michigan has since done a lot to regulate those sort of chemicals.
They've done a lot to try to inch.
But remember, regulation kills business. We can't regulate them. The companies care about you, and they're going to take care of your environment and your pay and your working conditions. We do not need the government involved.
Companies are designed to make money. Their only job is to make money. That is the primary concern of companies. If you want them to care about workers and other things, you need to put in regulation and you need to put in other checks and balances to ensure they have to care about their workforce. They care about their workforce only in as much as it helps make them more money.
Yep, that's absolutely true.
So during that time, I got pretty familiar with, being around Flint and watching kind of those later tiers and getting to see the scars of all those old plants that had been fallen into disrepair and disuse. This was back in, 2011 when, there's still buildings that had Pontiac's logo on the side of it, even though Pontiac had ceased being a brand 2 years earlier. And then, getting to drive around, you just kind of see the stuff at at the local grocery stores. You get to see how those folks are living. You get to see it's not a perfect measurement, but the sort of cars people drive, the kind of things they're buying, the sort of things that sell there do give you a hint. If you're selling a bunch of our high-end pizzas, I know it's people that can afford it. If I'm selling a bunch of the cheaper pizzas, though, I also know it's because that's what people can afford.
That's what people can afford.
So it skews that way.
Yeah, and I think too, Michigan, and obviously both sides tried to blame whatever leadership was in at the time for the downfalls of Michigan, Detroit, and Flint, and whatnot. But I think a lot of it has to do with federal policy as well. The fact that the companies were deregulated and we stopped enforcing antitrust laws and allowed the companies to start, subsidiarying all of these things out and shipping these jobs overseas and doing all that, when you had such just a heavily concentrated industry in that one spot, in the country. And then they're like, oh, cool. Now, we don't have to pay the union workers anymore because the government's going to turn the other cheek. Well, we ship all this shit out to Vietnam or Taiwan or wherever the hell they're getting these parts made.
And I think that and I think a large part of that was that kind of disenfranchisement of, well, globalism is good. I believe that, but I also think you have to find a way to make it right for your workers so that they just don't get left hung out to dry.
It still needs to be regulated. Yeah, they weren't sending the stuff over to Germany, which has, we have great free trade with Germany, but they pay their workers a decent wage, and it costs, they've got similar environmental protections and worker protections and all that kind of stuff, probably better, arguably, than we do. So it's probably cheaper to build the stuff here than it is there. So it only makes sense to trade with them when they have something of value to give us, and we're not losing anything, and vice versa. And that's where it comes in. We can only have free trade with countries that operate on similar wages, similar environmental regulations, similar to what we do. And that's where globalism needs those checks and balances. You can't just be shipping this over to third world countries where they're making, having children run heavy machinery to make our tube socks.
Yeah. I'd also add that a lot of the German car makers have plants in the south of the U.S., and they did that specifically to avoid getting them unionized. Same with, Nissan, same with Honda, same with Toyota. Mm-hmm. And they have fought unionization there, and their workers make a lot less. And so when the UAW tries to go ask for more for their workers, they say, well, we can't be competitive. Well, it's because those folks are willing to accept half the pay for the same job when the money is there. They could make more, but they also need to vote in a union to help realize those gains.
Yeah. And it's also ridiculous to make that argument. I mean, the numbers go back and forth, but the cost to build a car, the labor cost on it is between 10 and 15% total.
I heard as low as 5.
Yeah, I've heard as low as 5. Like I've heard numbers all over the board, but even if you're getting up into the 15%, that's not where the major cost differential of the car comes. If you double their wage, it's not going to go up by another 15%. If it goes up by another 2%, whatever. Yeah. And that's the thing is the companies are already charging the maximum people are willing to pay, and they are raking in record profits. There is a lot of cushion room in there, and they can't charge any more, or they would be. It has absolutely no bearing on what the production side costs are, is what they charge the final customer.
Yeah, and I think what that
again because there's no
and I think that also highlights one of the other major differences now between Michigan and Florida. Michigan has always been bigger into manufacturing. Florida has always been bigger into tourism. When tourism is booming, Florida's doing great. When manufacturing is booming, Michigan is a powerhouse that sets the rest of the region up. Like Toledo, Ohio is successful because it can manufacture Jeeps, not because people like Toledo, Ohio.
Right. Yeah.
Speaking of a powerhouse, I see in here you have somebody named Big Gretch.
Some people
I've not heard of this person.
Some people also know her as that woman from Michigan. Our governor, Gretchen Whitmire, has done a good job of trying to lead through both the pandemic and, the recovery since. I will say that she swung hard early at trying to do pandemic restrictions and pissed a lot of people off. She burned a lot of political capital because she thought she was doing the right thing. And I happen to agree. Most of hey, maybe you shouldn't be breathing on your neighbor while we don't know what this novel virus that's transmitted by breathing on your neighbor does. And a lot of people got mad about that because, they perceived her reaction as too tyrannical. I think it was enshrined in law from people that had did this before, and they tried to set us up with a good roadmap of what to do again. And then we kind of were like, nah, we'd rather make our own mistakes, boss. Thanks for trying. She has done a good job of leading the Democrats within the state of Michigan. I know that every once in a while she comes up as a perennial VP contender. And I do hope that, her good leadership continues. And with her in the governor's mansion right now, that was one of the very important reasons why so many of these reforms got through. If it was a Republican governor just vetoing it, I don't think a lot of the reforms that had been passed in the last 2 years would have been.
Absolutely not. I mean, you have to have that trifecta, and it's awesome. And and she seems fairly popular from a distance over here anyway. Granted, we run in our own bubbles, obviously, but you get... I haven't heard the bad, and normally, you get people bitching about neighboring governors. You hear people from Wisconsin bitch about Tim Walz all the time, like they really care, apparently. But you don't hear that the people from Wisconsin bitching about Gretchen.
No.
So I mean, she must be doing good. Anyway, so I think that really kind of wraps up the examples that we were going with here, as if you really want to look at how policy works with as few outliers as possible, this is it. The Midwest, these 3 states, because you've had one that's been progressive for a long time, one that's been conservative for a long time, and one that has been kind of washing back and forth in the wind for a while, and they're all fairly similar states. And I don't see how, after just looking at it at this point, that anybody can make these arguments anymore. So.
Fair enough.
Well, yeah. On that note, I think we've rambled on long enough, and I think we've ragged on Wisconsin a lot, mostly rightfully so.
We got to dig in at Ohio. I like that. I'm here for it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing these days. I think it'd be really nice if we ended this podcast by each saying one thing that we like about Wisconsin.
Oh,
yeah. Just to give us a little bit of feels as we leave today.
All right.
I'll say my cell phone always works great in Wisconsin, but I think that's just because there's 4 bars in every town.
All right. I like it. I'm going to be sincere in mine. I enjoy how much natural resources they have, all their state parks, and
it is a beautiful state.
It is really beautiful.
Give them that.
It definitely rivals Minnesota in some of those areas. So
yeah, absolutely
cool.
They do have good beer, and there's definitely you definitely don't have to go far to find it usually. Not that you have to go that far in Minnesota either, but they outshine us in number of drinking establishments by a wide margin, and I enjoy a drink. So I actually go to Wisconsin usually every week to a brewery to go drinking. So you got to give them credit there. The cheese is good. You can't argue.
You know what?
That.
I have nothing but nice things to say about the cheese curds. Those are amazing.
Yep.
And all those Green Bay Packer folks listening in, you do have a few more rings than the Minnesota Vikings.
You know what? We just needed to give them something
right.
to keep them over there. So they don't want to get too depressed. They're already drunk, and then if they lost all the time, they'd be sad too. So we had to give them something, just keep the dopamine levels up for them, so they didn't do anything to hurt themselves.
So we're coming for you. 0-3 doesn't matter. We're coming for
you. This will be the year every year.
That's right.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate both of you taking the time here. Too bad you couldn't fly in this time, Chris. But we appreciate you having here and your contributions and letting us know that things happen in Michigan.
It does exist.
It does. And yeah, till next time, I appreciate everybody sticking with us while we're still trying to figure this out and get our rhythm. Hopefully every episode is better than the last, and eventually we'll kind of hit that plateau where it's acceptably mediocre and
aggressively average.
At least aggressively average. That's what we're aiming for.
Maximum effort.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Let Them Eat Toast podcast.